So I got 3 guys separated by a half a point, and they're all top 8 prospects.
Right.
So the top of this group is very, very good. Cornerback class for the 2022 NFL Draft. I think the only appropriate place that we can start this conversation is by just putting our cards down on the table. CB1. Let's go ahead for the record.
Oh, Derek Stingley.
Derek Stingley.
Derek Stingley.
Derek Stingley Jr.
Sauce Gardner.
That's why you want to do this.
No, it's not. You know, I don't enjoy being the lone man on an opinion, but here's, I think, the thing that I think needs to be stated. And I speak for my own rankings when I say this. I have an 89.5 and 2 89s in the cornerback room as far as my final grades on guys. So I got 3 guys separated by a half a point, and they're all top 8 prospects.
All right.
So the top of this group is very, very good. And I know our consensus group is higher on Andrew Booth Jr. than what a lot of the other outlets are, but we all see him very similarly. So how close is that group for you guys? I just told you I'm 3 guys within a half a point of each other. You guys have that same tight bunch, or do you find more separation when you reflect on your own individual rankings?
They're super tight for me. I have 2 88.5s and an 88, so they're separated by a half a point. The exact same thing. They're all top 10 players on
Who's
my board.
Who's the other 88.5?
It's Andrew Booth.
So,
and then I have Sauce as the 88. So my
it was the perfect Joe Marino double dip opportunity.
Yeah.
You didn't even take it.
No, because you got to break the ties. And for me, as I've continued to state, 2019 Derek Stingley, what he showed that year is completely unmatched by anyone in this class, and there's just nothing missing. I mean, the ball skills, the man coverage, the zone coverage, the press, he tackles, he's physical, he has good size. You wish maybe he had a touch more length, but we're talking like just very small fractions of inches. Derek Stingley's that guy that if he's right, if he's playing to his potential, there's nobody else like him in the class.
I'm curious, Kyle. I mean, and not to veer off, but I'm curious. Tell me one area that Sauce Gardner is superior to Derek Stingley.
Being available and length. I gave you 2.
Listen, man. Okay. At the end of the day, man. As Joe said, Derek Stingley Jr. is the most talented cornerback in this class, and there isn't anything that he can't do.
I don't
and
disagree.
Sauce, while he is a great player too, he has length. I have questions, but again, my cornerback one is going to be Stingley as well.
So going back to your question, I want to introduce a 4th name because I actually have a 4th corner in that tier where they're separated by, I think, Stingley's my number 1 at 90, and then Trent McDuffie's my number 4. I think he's at 87. Yeah, I think Trent McDuffie is a really, really good player, and I know most don't really have him connected to the top 3 in terms of Stingley, Booth, and Gardner, but Trent McDuffie is a guy you feel really, really good about somewhere kind of in that mid to late first round in terms of his competitiveness, his foot quickness, his fluidity in transitions, just overall just ability to stay connected through the route is really outstanding. And yeah, you wish his arms were longer. I think he is barely over the 28.
He's 29 and 3/4.
28. What did you say, sorry?
29 and
3/4.
Yeah.
So you wish he was closer to that 31 threshold, but he's a really, really explosive athlete, and so he might lack the length. He has like a 40-inch vertical to kind of go up there and compete at the catch point, which I think is really important. And so I still have to say this is a really, really strong corner class at the top.
Yeah, for me, my cornerback rankings, they're a little bit more segmented. I have Derek Stingley and Andrew Booth. Those are my 1, 2, and those are extremely close when I'm talking about. I think there's a 91.5 and a 91. And then my third guy is actually what the guy Brentley just brought up, Trent McDuffie, and a guy whose name I don't think is brought up enough. And then I have Sauce Gardner. And a big part of that is, look, I respect Sauce Gardner's game. I think he's a highly talented football player. There are teams at the top of this draft, and I'm talking about in the top 10, that I think this guy will be a consistent Pro Bowl caliber player. But just for me and the way I evaluate players, like I say, I always start with can they play man first, and then I work my way down from there. And the guys that I have above Sauce Gardner, I just feel a little bit more comfortable doing that. But like I said, Sauce Gardner is a very good football player, but in whole and in totality, that this is a very good cornerback class, especially those 4 guys, and even working our way into the 2nd and 3rd round is still guys that for a certain scheme, like they play really well.
So let's talk about Trent a little bit, because we mentioned the length question that exists there with him. And I know when we did the player profile on Trent, we talked a lot about his feet. You guys can let me know if I'm off base or if this is unfair to put on Trent. But when I reflect on his foot quickness, I think about a guy like Jason Verrett coming out of TCU. And, Jason's really struggled to stay healthy throughout the course of his career. Some of that's been about his size. He had durability questions at TCU, ultimately still got drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. But that's the kind of caliber of foot quickness that's pretty rare air for just the raw foot speed that he has. And that helps me. I'm a little bit lower. I'm not, just kind of law of averages. I do have him a little lower for some of the questions about, that length and consistency and whether or not that's going to lead to ball production, ensuring that he's going to be able to completely undercut some throws and make plays on the football and play through the hands of guys. But there's no question the foot speed is super, super rare for Trent McDuffie.
I mean, length will not be as important if you don't have the hips and the footwork to stay in phase. I mean, if you're not in his hip pocket and don't necessarily have the skill set to stay with him, I mean, then length doesn't really matter a ton.
Can I bring up another name that gets left out of this conversation that I believe will go in the back end of this first round, and that's Kairii Elam. Yeah. And man, this is why I appreciate the conversations that we have so much, right? Because after watching his film, like you said, you have questions about his speed, and you're like, he might be a second round guy, right? But I can't remember which one of you guys brought it up, but it just talked about him playing zone. And I can't get that out of my head because, some of the other corners play zone, cover 3, and I'm thinking about this guy. He has all of the attributes to be a really good zone corner, meaning that he has ball skills and he has good instincts, right? So when he has the ability to kind of just turn his back to the sideline, keep his eyes on a quarterback, then he'll be able to make plays. And like you said, the ball skills, I don't believe that's something that's really coachable, right? Like you either have that or you don't. And then the instincts, we talked about NFL pedigree. So this is another guy, if he goes in a really good scheme, like you're talking about a really good corner because he's good in man, but he could possibly be great in zone coverage.
So you talked about a couple guys that are tall corners. I mean, we've talked about Sauce Gardner, we've talked about Kairii Elam, Andrew Booth, and Derek Stingley are not small corners either. You talk about tall corners, conversation usually doesn't take long to get to Tariq Woolen of UTSA as well. And I want to talk about him, and I also want to talk about Josh Williams from Fayetteville State, because I think those two guys are really fascinating for their height, their raw movement skills. Dre, you talk about guys having to have loose hips, oily hips, ability to move and maximizing your length. Those two dudes have length, and they also have fluidity in their bodies. Now, there's a level of competition and experience question for both of those guys, where Josh playing at Fayetteville State, very physical at the line of scrimmage, but not a lot of tape that really translates to the next level. Whereas Tariq Woolen has only been playing corner for 2.5 years.
2, yeah.
So he made this transition late, so you still see some rawness to his play there on the perimeter. But what do you think the ceiling is for players like this? Guys that have level of competition or experience that's not where you would like it to be, but have simply the uncoachable dynamics of being high level athletes, freak athletes on the outside.
I think their success is predicated on who's the coach and who can develop them. Like you think of Tariq Woolen, and Josh Williams, and as a coach, that's what you want, right? You want the athletic attributes, and you want a guy that you can mold, because it may be the fact that they don't have bad habits, right? Sometimes coaching is breaking bad habits. So you may get an NFL coach and you get a player that's coming to you, and then you're realizing, like, man, this guy in college, he learned some really bad things. But if it's Tariq Woolen, he's only been playing the cornerback position, 2 years. Yeah. So it's not a lot of habits that he has. So I can get him in my system and teach him, man, how I really want him to play press man. That, I believe that you play press with your feet first, then your hands. So there's so many things that you can teach him, and then on top of that, he runs a 4.25, right? Like that's pretty fast.
That's not bad.
So I would be excited. Yeah, I would be excited about getting those type of guys.
It's like 33.5. So he's built like a pass rusher playing on the outside. And I think the thing that both of those guys do have going for them, and I think about this was an interview that Wes Welker had done, talking about the difference in playing in the slot versus playing on the outside. And he said, playing on the slot was very cerebral as far as you have more free access. Dre, we talked earlier this weekend about the challenges that come with playing in the nickel, where there's the two-way go, there's more space to work with. You don't traditionally get up in guys' face with the same amount of consistency on the outside. But Wes talked about, I had success because I embraced the cerebral dynamic of the position where you understand based on the safety shell and the alignment of the second level, there's only so many different things they can do to you. And once you know that versus the route that you're charged with, you can anticipate well how you need to make your adjustments. The outside is a grown man's game. Yeah. That's where the freaks live, right? The freak athletes that are your wide receivers and your corners. And I think from that reason, let me ask you, would you be surprised if Josh Williams ends up sneaking into the last few picks of the top 100?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think he should go in that range because he gives you size, length, and athleticism and a physical brand of football that he likes to play. And, you know, when I was talking to you guys about him, and originally after I watched his tape, I'm like, guys just didn't get off the line. Like, he just literally pinned guys, capped them right away off the menu. And sometimes he would allow guys to kind of get into their release, and then he would just bait throws and make plays on the ball. And he active run sport guy. And we saw him go to the Senior Bowl, and there was some of that showed up there too, but obviously a little bit challenged in different ways with different release packages, and you saw him kind of have to work through that technique. But, I mean, his types of traits and the physical demeanor and he kind of has everything. And like Keith said, just like get this guy in your building and have him develop. That's going to be a coach's dream. So I think he does go into top 100.
I mean, you think about where Nashawn Wright went last year in the third round.
That's exactly who I was thinking about.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if that guy can go based on the physical skill set
Tyreek Williams
as early as he did, I don't know about that. But would be willing to bet we get one or two corners that do go in the top 10 when it's all said and done. This is a very good cornerback group, and as we've discussed here, you have some really enticing mid and late round options for you as well that are going to meet all of those physical tools that you usually see get developed once they get to the NFL level.